Welcome to the Never Ending Backlog podcast, your place for short reviews from a gamer with the goal of reducing his backlog. From adventures to sandboxes, join our host as we walk through a collection of unplayed treasures. Now, let's take a look at the featured game of this episode of the Never Ending Backlog.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Never Ending Backlog podcast. I'm your host Zach, and today we are reviewing a game I played once on the Xbox One, and when I sold my Xbox One I was kind of bummed because I wanted to keep playing this game more as I didn't get very far yet, but then they released it to PC a few years later. And that game is Sunset Overdrive. So what is it? According to Steam, Sunset Overdrive transforms an open world apocalypse into your tactical playground. Zip, grind, and wall run across Sunset City with an unconventional arsenal. Hyper agility, unique weapons, and customizable abilities deliver an explosive and irreverent adventure in the end times. The genre is third-person shooter, action, adventure. Release date was 2018 on PC, but 2014 on the Xbox One. The developer, Insomniac Games and Blind Squirrel Games. Insomniac Games you've probably heard of. They are responsible for the new Spider-Man and Miles Morales games, Spyro the Dragon, Ratchet & Clank, Resistance, and many others. Blind Squirrel Games is for Drifters, Sims 4, Prey, XCOM 2, and others. They've worked with a lot of different game developers as well. Publisher, once again, Xbox Game Studios. It seems to be a trait for me to pick up Xbox Game Studios games as they published, the Master Chief Collection, which we reviewed during last week's Halo Week, Age of Empires Definitive, which was from this week, and many others like Sea of Thieves, Flight Simulator, and Battletoads. Current price is $4.99 in the Steam Autumn Sale, down from $19.99. Now let's jump into the actual review. Regarding the install and startup, Sunset Overdrive is certainly a larger game. It's 28 gigabytes, however, it's also a ported Xbox One game, which kind of verifies the large size. For graphics, for a game that was released in 2014 on the Xbox One, it holds up pretty well for being a 6-year-old game. It's extremely gory. Even if the zombies spew orange blood, which is supposed to be the energy drink, however, there's an obscene amount of pus, gushing, and guts. This game is definitely made for adults. I can't reiterate this enough. This is not made for kids. Do not play this around for kids if you don't want your kids to see this type of stuff. It is made for adults. It's a fun game, though. Cannot say how fun this game is. Regarding audio, it's so good. It's essentially Crazy Taxi's soundtrack mixed with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater soundtrack with the sass and sarcasm of Saints Row. There is an abundance of adult language throughout this entire game, so just be aware. I mean, they will say every word you can possibly think. I'm not going to say it here, obviously, because I don't do that in the podcast, but there's definitely some bad words here, so just be aware. Don't play around kids if you don't want them to hear it. Controls, awful. Just plain awful. I first played Sunset Overdrive on the Xbox One, and the controls were flawless. You're grinding around, aiming and shooting and swinging. It was all effortless and smooth. However, while trying to use the keyboard is just a terrible experience. Primarily because there are too many things going on at once, and the game requires precise button mashing to increase combos and grinding. Your fingers will be playing Twister with this game. So if you can snag a controller, do yourself a favor and do it. I actually didn't do it for this review, so it was a miserable experience. It was bad. I mean, you are using WSAD, ZXC, FG, VB. You're using every button on the keyboard, and you're using them in combos, and you're using them in really weird ways, and you're also using your mouse as well. It's terrible. I'm just gonna say right now, it's terrible on a keyboard and mouse. I'm a big keyboard and mouse guy, but no, this game was not made for it. Get yourself a controller. You'll be so much happier you did. I don't care if it's a PS4 controller or Xbox One controller or a Steam controller. Doesn't matter. Just get yourself a controller. It works better with the dual analog sticks, and it works much better with the buttons. So just be aware of it. Because it is, like I said, the gameplay, you need to basically do it. So speaking of the gameplay, an energy drink manufacturer created an energy drink that mutates its consumers into zombie-like creatures. You play as kind of like this punk guy that doesn't want to go to work, and your job is to basically kill the creatures, expose the energy drink company's malfunction of what they did, and just grind around the city. It's pretty awesome. Difficulty, I'd say the game is actually fairly challenging. It has a good tutorial and gets you right into the action. It doesn't really spoon feed you, but it gives you what you need. However, I'd say, like I said, the hardest part of this game was attempting to use the keyboard and mouse. So if I were to get rid of that, I'm sure I'd be a much happier person. Regarding achievements, so far I've earned 2 out of 80 achievements, so a lot more for me to earn, and they didn't really just throw them at me, which is nice. Regarding pros, it's a well done port of the Xbox One game, and I'm glad it made it to PC, even if it was 4 years later, and Insomniac basically stopped supporting it with challenges, events, etc. In fact, when I played the Xbox One version of this game, it was quite a bit after the game has already been released. So there are like little billboards and stuff like that, and it'll be like, no new events, because basically it's so old that they weren't going to support it anymore. So, I wish I would have actually played it when it was first came out, because I did see a lot of good things about it, but I didn't have Xbox One at that time. The customization system is relatively robust. From your character upgrading weapons and combos, there are plenty of options to unlock and upgrade. And I love the plot of this game. Plus, the game mechanics are extremely well done. Like I mentioned, it's a combination of Tony Hawk, Crazy Taxi, and Saints Row all in one game, and it's phenomenal. Some cons, controls on the keyboard and mouse are awful. Avoid it at all costs. Grab a controller and enjoy it the way it's meant to be played. It is a little bit larger. It does take a little bit longer for it to load up. It seems a pretty slow running game. It does get some loading screens and buffer screens, which is unfortunate. And like I said, another con, it's not a con to me because I'm an adult and I really don't have a lot of kids hanging around me, so it doesn't really bother me. It's definitely vulgar, whether it's gore, swearing, blood, guts, violence. It's all there. Drug references. It's all there. So just be aware. There's also sexual innuendos. Just be aware. It's definitely a con for some people. Not as much for me, but it's good that you know it. Would I recommend this game? I absolutely recommend this game. I actually did my very first blog post online for this game years ago for the Xbox One. And as a fan of Crazy Taxi and Saints Row, this game has that punk rock angst about it. And it's just extremely well done. It's fun to play. It's quirky. The characters are hilarious. And overall, it's just a wild, adrenaline-fueled game. I mean, you might not have gotten what it's about. Like I said, you're a punk guy and you grind with your shoes. You're just like grinding on top of, like, think of like you're Tony Hawk grinding on like rails like that, but you don't have the skateboard. You're just grinding around. And while you're doing it, you're shooting zombies in the face with guns and funny weapons like you would in Saints Row. And the faster you go, the more you grind, the more points you get, the combos you get. The music is all punk rock. It's playing in the background. There's a lot of bright colors. The zombies explode into orange pus. It's a very vibrant game, so it's pretty funny. So anyway, I definitely recommend it. It's a fun one. It's $4.99. It's a great deal. Even at $20, I'd pick it up too. That is Sunset Overdrive on the Steam store. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow.